Okay, Steph, this is definitely not a great video, but hopefully this will make sense. So I find the easiest way till you get really comfortable with a crochet hook to start your chain is to just take it rather than using your hook and crisscross it like that. Put your fingers through, and basically you're just tying, I think they call it a slip knot. See? So you've got a tail hanging, you've got a loop, you've got the part connected to your skein, and you can pull on that to tighten the loop. Okay, that's your slip knot. And then you take your hook, you put it in, and you adjust it. Now, give yourself a good amount of yarn to work with. And the best way to do this is just to hold the hook so that you're comfortable. And I like to kind of hold on to the tail a little bit. It just gives me some control. And to start, you're going to do what they call a chain. And you're going to take this yarn and you're going to yarn over. So see, it's now wrapped around, and then you're just going to pull it so that the hook connects, and you go through that, and you've created a chain. You're going to yarn over and just pull it through that loop again. And you want to keep your yarn relaxed. I'm using an H hook, which is kind of a standard size hook, yarning over again and through that loop. And you want to try to keep them as uniform in size as possible. Again, yarning over and through the loop. Now, wrap it around so you yarn over and pull through the loop. And that's called chaining. And your pattern will tell you how many chains you need to do to start with. So we go through the loop, we yarn over, through the loop, yarn over, through the loop, yarn over, through the loop. Yarn over, through the loop. And in your pattern, a chain like this where you're just yarning over and going through your loop, it's written as CH. That means chain. So you're yarning over and you're going through your loop. Now we're going to do that for as many stitches as your pattern calls for. And I'll get back to you in a minute. Okay, so now we've reached the end of our chain, and this is what it should look like. I've done 32 chains for my square because I am not working with a pattern. So my chain is 32. Yours will be whatever the pattern says. Now, after we've finished our chain, what we're going to do is take it and turn it. And you'll see right here that it kind of forms a V. We're going to skip the first one right there. And we're going to go to the next one. And we're going to stick our hook just through the opening. And now we have 2 loops on our hook. We're going to take our yarn, which is behind us, and we're going to yarn it over. So now we have 1, 2, 3, and we're going to pull through, and now we have 2 loops. 1, 2. We're going to yarn over, and we're going to pull through both of those loops, and that's our first crochet. So how we did that again is we found the next hole, which is right there. We put our hook through the hole, We yarn over and we pull through one loop. We now have 2 loops on our hook. We're going to take our yarn and we're going to yarn over and we're going to pull through both those loops. So it goes into our next chain, through. We now have 2 loops on. We yarn over. We pull through one loop, and that makes 2. 1, 2. We yarn over, and we pull through both. And you're starting to see your crochets show up. There you go. So again, we're going to go through the loop, yarn over, and pull through, and we're creating 2 loops. We want to yarn over and pull through both loops. And again, we want to keep our yarn nice and loose, trying to keep up the black so you have a good contrast background. So that you want to keep it nice and loose so that it stays the same size. That's called your gauge, is what size you're making it. And a good thing to practice before you even get into your pattern is to look at what the pattern says for the gauge. Again, we're going to go through, yarn over, pull through, creating those 2 loops. We're yarning over, and we're pulling through both. So your gauge is basically your measurements. You can start to see our single crochet there. And every pattern will tell you what a gauge is. And it'll say, you know, a gauge is 4 rows, how many high we're going, of 4 stitches should equal, 4 by 4 inches. It'll basically just tell you how many rows and how many stitches in each row you should have to make up a square measurement. And if you're doing that and you say have 4 rows of 4 stitches and it equals a 4 by 4 square, you know your gauge is going to be correct to get the size of the pattern. So again, back to our single crochet. You're going into the loop. You're yarning over, just like that. Pull through, and this is going to feel very awkward in the beginning. 2 loops. You're going through both those loops. Through, and then you're going to take your yarn and you're going to yarn over. Create those 2 loops again. Yarn over and pull through both. Through the loop, through the chain, that is. Yarn over, pull through. So you've got those 2 loops. Yarn over and through. Through the chain, yarn over, pull it through to have those 2 loops, yarn over and through. Just like that. And we're going to do that all the way across, going through the chain, yarning over, pulling it through so that we have those 2 loops, yarning over, and then just pulling it through those 2 loops. We're going to do it all the way across until we get to the last chain. Okay, So here we are finishing our first row. You can see my row of crochet. I've got a little bit of my chain left. And we're going to just finish off the same way we've been doing the whole rest of the row. We're going to go through the chain, yarn over, through to create those 2 loops again, through the 2 loops. And we're going to do that all the way through to our very last one. And as you can see right here, my last one is right there. And then I've got the tail of my slip stitch. So be careful that you're only going through that very last loop. And you're just going to do it the same as the other one. You're going to go through, yarn over, pull it through, yarn over, and now we're at the end. You can see we've reached the end. So, depending upon what your pattern says, the most likely thing you're going to do when you've finished your row of single crochet is you're going to chain again, just chain 1. And this first row, I always think is the hardest because you got to get through that chain. Now you have a nice foundation. So what we're going to do is we're just going to take our yarn, we're going to yarn over and pull through that loop. And now we have a chain. And that's called chaining 1. And your pattern may call for more than 1 chain, but I'm going to say 1 chain generally. You just follow your pattern though. Now, we're just going to turn our crochet. So now it's facing the opposite direction. And you'll see right here that we have V's now. I like to call these V's. I'll show you one that's a little bigger. See, I like to call them V's because I think they look like a V. And we're going to take that first V that's right here, and we're going to skip it. And we're going to start in the next V. And we're just going to slide our hook through. You can see there's a nice big opening there. I'm pulling my yarn out so you can see, but there's an opening now. We're going to go under that V and just poke through like we did the first time. We're going to yarn over just like before. It's the exact same stitch. Pull through, and now we have created our 2 loops. See them? And we're just going to yarn over again and pull through both loops. And you've just done your first crochet of your second row. Again, we're just going to find in between that V, under it is a hole that we push our hook through. And then we're going to yarn over and pull through, and we've got those 2. See, 2 loops, just like before. And we're going to yarn over and pull through. Just the same thing we did all the way across the first row. And at the beginning, it's going to look to you like you're not even, like it's hanging out there. That's okay, because as you come across and you actually start to finish your crocheting, it's going to pull it up, and you'll see that you're really actually making a square. So don't worry about the feeling that it kind of feels like it's hanging down at the beginning. That's just fine. So again, you're going to just find that hole of the under the next V, push through it, yarn over, pull through, get those 2 loops, yarn over, pull through both, and you've done another single crochet. And that's really all there is to it. It's just the same process of going through, yarning over, pulling through for those 2 loops, yarning over, and through both. Okay, so here we are again. We're at the end of our second row. And it looks a little different this time than the first time we got to the end of a row, but not really. So you've got, I have 3 left, 4, just kidding. So I'm just going to continue off to the end of my row like we did before. Through, yarning over, pulling it through, 2 loops, over and through my last hole, my last row, the hole. Yarning over, going through. I have the 2, I've yarned over, and I'm going. I bet you're a pro by now. Now, at this point, I've got 2 left, and this is where it gets a little different because you see it kind of trailing off. I've got one last one that's really, excuse me, really obvious, my nice V, and then I've got one that's not quite so obvious. It's kind of trailing off there, but I'm just going to treat them the same. I'm going to go through, yarn over, I've got my 2 loops, yarning over, and then I'm going to go through that last one that's kind of hanging off, and you got to be careful here to make sure that you get both of your, under both parts of the V. So see there, now I'm through, and you might have to, you know, work it a little bit as you get comfortable with it. And I'm just treating it the same way. I went through, I yarned over, I pulled through, now I've got the 2 loops, I've yarned over, and there we go. I've done my last single crochet. So it looks just like when we got to the end of the last row. And we're going to do the exact same thing that we did at the end of the last row. We're going to just chain 1. So we're going to take our yarn, we're going to yarn over, and just pull through that loop that we have there. And then we're going to kind of make sure that we keep it the same tightness as everything else. So there we go, we've chained 1. Now we're going to do the same thing we did at the end of the last row. We're just going to turn it around. So now our single crochet, our row of crochet, we've got 2 of them, nice and uniform sized. We're going to just start working the same as we did last time. We see our V, our very first V, we're going to skip that one and go to the next one. And you can see there's that nice hole there. Nice hole. I'm just going to stick my hook through it, skipping that first one, going into the second. Yarning over, got my 2 loops, yarning over, and through both those loops. I'm going to find that hole again. See, there it is. I'm going through the hole. And you'll notice, actually, when you look at it now, if you count how many pieces of yarn you have your loop, and then you've got the 2 strands of the V. My yarn is pretty thick here, so you can't see them. 1, 2. That's considered just one loop when we talk about a loop. So 1, 2 loops. We're yarning over, pulling through. Got my 2 loops, yarning over, and pulling it through. Same thing we've been doing now, over and over again. We're just establishing this new row, going through, yarning over again, and going through both those loops. And again, you're going to kind of feel like this corner is hanging out and not square, but it's the same thing that we did at the end of the last row. If you look now, it's nice and square, and it will continue to be as we build up the foundation. So don't worry about it, just as long as you're keeping your stitches as close to the same size as you can, and that just takes practice. You'll be just fine. So now we're going through that hole again. We're putting the yarn over, pulling it through. Got 2 loops, yarning over, and pulling through both. Okay, so here we are. We're back at the end of our 3rd row. By now you should be finishing your 3rd row. We've done our chain, does not count as a row. So then we did our first row of crochet back across the chain. We turned, we went across that first row of crochet. We turned again, and now we are just about finishing our 3rd way across. So as I finish up, you'll notice I've got 1 V, 2 V, and a little kind of blip at the end. I don't know what to call that, truthfully, but it's not part of our crochet. So we've got 2 chains left here where I'm at. I'm going to go through, yarn over, come through, yarn over, just like we've been doing, And now this is my last one because it's my last V. Go through, yarn over, come through our 2 loops just like before, yarn over, and we've single crocheted. Now that little blip at the end, you just ignore that. We have now finished our row on that last V. So we're going to do what we've been doing all along. We're going to chain by yarning over and pulling through our loop. And we've just chained. So there you go. Now we're going to just turn like we did the last time and find our first V that we're skipping, going to our second V and going through it and just starting like we have the last 2 rows, yarning over, going through, yarning over and pulling through our 2 loops. And it's just the same, finding our new loop, going through, yarning over, making those 2 loops, yarning over again, and pulling them through. And so by now we have pretty well established how to do a row. So you just keep going like we've done, and what you'll see next time is I'm going to show you what it should look like when we're about ready to finish up our square. So you just keep going through those rows, finishing off like we have at the end of each row for the number of rows that your pattern calls for. And in most patterns, if you did 32 stitches across, you'll have 32 rows. Or 16 stitches, 16 rows. It just depends on your pattern and what it tells you to do. So just keep going with that, and I'll see you at the end to finish off our square. Okay, so we're back, and by now you should have finished up your square. Now, I didn't want to make a huge square like I was starting with to show you. So while I was working, I made a smaller one just for demonstration purposes here at the end. But you'll see we're done. We're, for the most part, square. Well, we're not done, but we're to the end, basically. And it's square. And so what we're doing, I'm at the end of my last row. And I've got my last. I'm going to show you 2 ways you can finish off. And it really depends on what you're doing. So this first one is just going to be, say you're making this a standalone square and you have some options. Now, if your pattern says that you're going to then add in another color and work another block, I don't know how your pattern goes. You just have to follow your pattern. This is, say, we're making our own square today, just a square, that's it. So I'm at the end of my last row, finishing up. I'm doing what we've been doing all along, just a single crochet. I'm in my very last square here. And I'm done. Now, I like to have kind of a finished look because, you know, I have a nice finish down there where I don't have those V's. I have that initial chain. So you have some options. And some people don't like to do this, and I don't always. But I'm going to go ahead and just finish off my row by chaining one more time. And we're going to work one more row, but this time I'm just going to do kind of a finish. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through, skip that first V again, go into the second one just like always, so we keep that nice square edge. I'm going to yarn over, and I'm going to pull through everything, so through both. And this is going to kind of just give me an edge. I'll show you in a minute. So again, go through that loop, yarn over, and pull through everything. Through the loop, yarn over, and through everything. Through the loop, yarning over, and pulling through everything. And this is just a way of kind of giving it a finished look. And what you can start to see here is that it's getting rid of that V and giving it kind of a finished edge. And some people do this, some people don't. It just depends on what you're doing, because it does kind of give you a puff at the top and changes the pattern. You can see right there. It's upside down, but you can see that's what the edge looks like. But it kind of gives it more of a finished edge rather than having those V's that we've been working. And that's one option. So again, we're going to go through our loop, yarn over, and go through everything all the way across. Now I've finished the way I like to finish my square, and it's done, and it looks nice, and it gives you just kind of that finished edge. I'm done to the first edge. I'm going to go ahead and, oh, I forgot one. Go through there. Oh, see, even I make mistakes. Go through, yarn over, and finish. Now I'm going to turn the corner. I'm going to do that by yarning over and making a chain. And then this is where it gets a little tricky, but this gives it that nice uniform edge all the way around. Now we're going to work our side. See, this was our square as we were making it. Now we're going to turn, and you'll see that it still has holes. So I'm just going to go into that first hole. I'm going to yarn over and come through just like we did. And then I'm going to find there's another hole just right there. Yarn over and through just like we've been doing to give it just that nice finished edge all the way over. And you can just work these into the holes that are on the edges. They're really easy to see. You can see them right in there. Over. So here we are, we're just finishing up our binding all the way around our square. And you can see I'm almost back to the beginning. That's where I started my binding. So I'm going to do my last stitch, come through both, and then to join them, I like to just find there's a little loop right there that we created. And I like to do that as my last one and just go through both of them. Now, that's our bound square. It's all done. It's bound. How do we tie off? Oh, look at that. I'm trying to give you good contrast. All tied off. So now, if you didn't want to do that binding, if you wanted to just finish after you did your stitches back and forth in all your rows, if you didn't want to bind around the edges like we just did, this is the other option. I said you had two options, and this is just called tying off. So now I've got my loop, my little hook here. See, my loop on my hook, and I've got my string. And what we're going to do is we're going to tie off, or finishing off. In your pattern, when it talks about finishing off, this is probably what it's going to be talking about. So I'm going to get my scissors out, and I want to cut a good amount, leaving that loop still there on the hook. You want to cut yourself, some good distance, because you're going to need to work with that still. And what I like to do, and there are a lot of ways to do this, but I like to just take that last loop after I've cut my yarn off. And I like to bring it through like we're going to chain, and I just like to pull it all the way through. So basically I'm tying a knot. Just tie it nice and tight right there. But it's important that you don't cut this, because if you cut it at the knot, it's just all going to come unraveled. So what you're going to do at this point, and I don't have a needle with me right now, or else I'd show you, is you're going to just take this with a needle, a blunt needle. You can get what they call a knitting or a crochet needle at your store when you're getting your supplies. And you're just going to weave this back through this last row. And it's going to take some time, but you just take it and you're going to weave it in and out. And I like to do it right here along this tightest part of our row. And you weave it in and out. And once you've gotten it to the end, then you can cut off if there's any tail. I mean, it doesn't need to take forever, but you want to weave in so that you've got plenty of tail woven into this. And it's just like stitching. And you just weave it in and out so that it stays secure. And you do it with this end. And you're going to do it with that starting tail too, down here back at the beginning. And when you've got that, then you've got your square. So I'm going to go do that quickly, and I'll show you your finished product in a minute. All right, so there you go. There's our square. It's finished. It's got that nice bound off edge that we worked on. And if you don't want to do the edge, like I said, you just finish off like we did where we tie the knot at the end and then we weave it back through. As you can see, you probably can't even see where I've done my weaving. And if your pattern calls for you to keep going or to join these together, you know, there's some other things you can do to it, but this is just your basic square. Stretching mine all weird. So, you know, it's nice and strong. Single crochet. Great practice is to just make bigger ones of these, and then you've got a whole bunch of dish rags. These make great dish rags, you know, because if you use a heavier weight acrylic yarn, they're nice and scrubby. Yeah, great. You can see why I'm just making this video for you, Steph. So I hope this works. Reading your pattern is going to be difficult, and understanding different stitches and stuff. Go to your local yarn shop. You know, the stores like Michael's and stuff, those are great too, but they may not be as knowledgeable or have the time to sit down with you. And since we all know I love shopping local, I say find your local yarn shop, go talk to them, say your friend tried to teach you over a video, and they'll sit down and help you, or they have classes. Classes are great. So I hope this helps. I hope you have a nice square. I'd love to see your square when you're done, no matter what it looks like. I remember my beginning squares were awful. I'm sure yours will be great, but I'd love to see it. Ask me questions, videotape yourself. As you can see, this was high quality videoing. If, you know, making it if you're not sure you're doing it right, and I can watch it, and hopefully you have a great square.